As you settle into the quiet of this moment, let your mind drift back to a medieval castle in England, around 1350 CE, where the air is heavy with the scent of wood smoke, damp straw, and the faint tang of boiled cabbage. The castle looms over the landscape, its stone walls cold and imposing, its halls echoing with the clank of pots, the creak of wooden floors, and the murmured orders of a stern steward. This is not a tale of knights or lords, but of ordinary workers, scullions, chambermaids, and guards whose lives were shaped by the castle's relentless demands. Their days were filled with labor, their nights with the chill of stone and the weight of rules, in a world where filth and cold were constant companions. There's no rush here, no need to hold on to every detail. Let the distant crackle of a hearth, the rustle of rushes on the floor, and the soft hum of a servant's song lull you, like the gentle flicker of torchlight. Close your eyes, if you wish, and let this journey into the medieval castle carry you toward rest. Tonight we'll explore 10 facets of life for these castle workers, each a glimpse into their struggles, routines, and fleeting moments of connection. From the filthy, freezing halls to the rigid hierarchy that governed every move, we'll move slowly, savoring the textures and sounds of a time long past. The air is thick with the smell of ash and effort, the castle a maze of toil and survival. Life was harsh disease, cold, and punishment loomed large, but there were also moments of warmth, shared laughter, and quiet resilience. Let's begin by stepping into the castle, where the daily grind reveals why a single night would test your endurance, wrapping you in the rhythm of a world both distant and vivid. Imagine standing in the great hall of a medieval castle in 1350, where the air is thick with the acrid smell of smoke from a massive hearth, the damp mustiness of straw-strewn floors, and the faint stench of unwashed bodies. You're a worker, a scullion scrubbing pots, a chambermaid sweeping rushes, or a guard shivering on the battlements, part of the unseen army that keeps this fortress alive. The castle is a place of cold stone, flickering torchlight, an unyielding hierarchy, where every task is a battle against filth, chill, and rules. Life here is no fairy tale, and a single night would push you to your limits. Let's wander through a day in your life, letting the castle's rhythm, the clank of iron, the creak of wood, the weight of labor settle over you like a heavy cloak, guiding you toward a state of calm. Your day begins before dawn, stirred by the steward's sharp call or the distant crow of a rooster from the village below. You sleep in a cramped corner of the servants' quarters, on a straw pallet shared with others, its dampness seeping through your thin woolen tunic. The air is frigid, your breath visible in the dim glow of a rushlight, its smoky tallow stinging your eyes. You rise, pulling on rough breeches or a linen shift, the fabric coarse against your skin, patched from years of use. Breakfast is sparse, a hunk of coarse rye bread, its texture dense and chewy, perhaps with a sip of weak ale or a scrap of hard cheese. The ale is sour, the bread tough, but it fuels you for the day's work. The air warm with the faint smell of yeast and the hearth's embers. Work is relentless. As a scullion, you're in the kitchen, scrubbing iron pots blackened with grease, your hands raw from ash and lye, the air heavy with the smell of boiling pottage, barley, onions, and a bone for flavor. The kitchen is a chaos of clattering pots, shouted orders, and the heat of the fire, its smoke curling upward, stinging your eyes. If you're a chambermaid, you sweep the great hall's rushes, matted with mud, food scraps, and dog waste, the air thick with dust as you haul them to a midden. The new rushes, green but already wilting, smell of earth, but they'll soon be filthy again. As a guard, you stand watch on the battlements, the wind cutting through your cloak, the stone beneath your feet like ice, the air sharp with the scent of rain and leather. The castle's grandeur is for the Lord. For you, it's a place of toil, where every corner hides dirt or danger. Filth is inescapable. The rushes trap everything: spilled ale, bones, even human waste when the privy is too far. Chamber pots, emptied into ditches, leave a lingering stench, the air sharp with decay. Rats scurry in the shadows, their squeaks blending with the creak of wooden beams or the drip of water from a leaky roof. Water is scarce, hauled from a well in heavy buckets, its taste muddy and cold. Soap is a rarity for workers, bathing a dream you wash with a rag, your skin gritty with sweat and ash, the air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies. Cleanliness is a luxury reserved for the Lord's household, their basins of scented water a world apart from your reality. Cold is a constant enemy. The castle's stone walls hold no warmth, their surfaces slick with damp in winter. Even the great hall with its roaring fire is draughty, the air smoky and biting as wind sneaks through arrow slits or uncovered windows. Your clothes, wool, tunic, hose, and a thin cloak offer little protection, the air chilling your bones as you work or sleep. At night you huddle under a single blanket, the straw beneath you damp, the air heavy with mildew, and the faint smell of mold. The fire's warmth doesn't reach the servants' quarters, and frostbite is a risk for guards on the walls, the air stinging their fingers and toes. Rules govern every moment. The Lord Steward, a stern figure with a ledger, enforces order when to work, eat, or sleep. His voice cuts through the air, sharp as a whip, demanding silence or haste. A misstep, spilling ale, speaking out of turn, or lingering too long could mean a cuff or docked wages, the air tense with his disapproval. The Lord's family dines in the hall, their laughter and clink of silver a distant echo, while you move quietly, head bowed, your place in the hierarchy clear. The church looms large too. You pray at dawn or dusk, the air heavy with the drone of Latin and the scent of wax from the chapel's candles. A wrong step could offend God or man, the air thick with the weight of obedience. Life outside the castle is no easier. Many workers live in the nearby village, in huts of wattle and daub, their roofs leaking in the rain, the air damp with mud and straw. You walk home at dusk, your feet sinking into muddy paths, the air carrying the scent of wood smoke and the murmur of neighbors sharing bread or gossip. The castle looms over the village, its walls a reminder of your servitude. As night falls, you collapse onto your pallet, the air quiet save for the wind's howl, the ache in your body a testament to survival. As the castle's shadows fade, let's shift to the life of one worker, whose story reflects the challenges of this gritty, freezing world. Let your thoughts drift to the smoky kitchen of a castle in northern England in 1350, where the air is thick with the scent of grease, burning logs, and the faint earthiness of herbs. Here we meet Agnes, a kitchen maid whose life is a quiet thread in the castle's bustling tapestry. Imagine standing beside her, the fire's glow warming your hands, the clatter of pots and the hiss of boiling water filling the air. Agnes's story is one of endurance, not glory, a reflection of the countless workers who toiled in the castle's shadows, their hands and hearts keeping it alive. Let's follow her journey, letting the rhythm of her days, the crackle of the hearth, the weight of a pot, the soft hum of her voice, lull you like a gentle song, guiding you toward rest. Agnes was born in 1328 in a village near the castle to a peasant farmer and a weaver. Her father tilled the Lord's fields, his hands calloused from the plow, the air filled with the scent of earth and sweat. Her mother spun wool by firelight, the soft whir of the spindle, a constant sound, the air warm with the smell of lanolin and straw. Life was tied to the land, but at 14, Agnes was sent to the castle to work, her family needing the meager wages, 6 pence a month, to survive. The air in the village was fresh with hay and dew, a world she left for one of stone, smoke, and labor. Her first day in the kitchen was overwhelming. The heat of the fire, the weight of iron pots, the steward's sharp commands filling the air with tension. In the kitchen, Agnes's days were long and sweltering. She rose before dawn, dressing in a coarse linen shift and apron, her hair tucked under a cap to keep it from the fire. Her work began with stoking the hearth, hauling wood from the yard, her arms aching, the air thick with ash and the sharp crack of splitting logs. She scrubbed pots, their surfaces crusted with grease, her hands red from lye and cold water, the air heavy with the smell of boiling pottage, barley, leeks, and a scrap of mutton. Turning the spit was grueling, the fire's heat scorching her face, the air filled with the drip of fat and the smoke that stung her eyes. The kitchen was a chaos of clanging pots, shouted orders from the cook, and the constant hum of labor, the air rich with the savory scent of herbs like sage or thyme. At 18, Agnes married Thomas, a stable hand who mucked stalls and groomed the Lord's horses, the air around him thick with the smell of manure and leather. Their wedding was simple, held in the village church, the air scented with wax from candles and the faint sweetness of wildflowers tucked into Agnes's hair. They lived in a small hut in the village, its walls of mud and straw, its floor cold earth, the air damp with leeks and the smell of straw bedding. Their son, John, was born a year later, his cries filling their cramped home, the air warm with the scent of milk and wool. Agnes's wages bought bread, ale, and occasionally a bit of cheese, the air heavy with the weight of providing for her family while still serving the castle. Life was hard, and the Black Death in 1348 made it harder. The plague spared Agnes, but took her parents and John, who was only 4. The air was thick with the smell of death-burning herbs, meant to ward off the miasma, the silence of the village broken by wails. Agnes worked through her grief, her hands trembling as she kneaded dough or scrubbed pots, the air heavy with worry for Thomas and their newborn daughter Margaret. The castle offered no respite. The steward demanded the same work, the air sharp with his commands, the Lord's feasts continuing despite the village's losses. Hunger followed the plague as crops failed and the Lord's demands for grain grew, the air tense with the rumble of empty stomachs. There were moments of light. Agnes found solace with other maids, their laughter shared over a pot of pottage, the air warm with the smell of onions and companionship. Festivals like Christmas or Midsummer brought relief. Villagers danced to a piper's tune, the air rich with roasted meat and the glow of bonfires. At home, Agnes sang lullabies to Margaret, her voice soft in the dim light of a rushlight, the air scented with milk and straw. These moments were fleeting, sparks in the grind of daily life, but they sustained her, the air filled with the warmth of community and family. By her 30s, Agnes's body, bore the marks of her labor, her hands scarred, her back stooped from years over the fire. She died in 1365, likely from a fever, her life unnoticed but vital, the air heavy with the quiet legacy of her endurance. As Anne's story fades, let's shift to the traces of this world, uncovered by those who seek its past. Imagine standing in the ruins of a medieval castle, its crumbling walls stark against a modern sky, where archaeologists sift through earth to uncover fragments of its past. The year is now, but your mind lingers in 1350, where the air was thick with smoke, straw, and the damp scent of stone. Workers like Agnes left few written records, their lives preserved in the objects they touched: a broken pot, a worn broom, a rusted knife. Archaeology is a window into their world, revealing the culture, mysteries, and resilience of those who kept the castle alive. Let's explore these traces, letting their stories settle like dust in a quiet hall, their whispers guiding you toward rest. Castles, like those at Dover or York, were fortresses and homes, their stone walls scarred by time. Excavations reveal their inner workings: charred hearths in kitchens, their stones blackened by years of fires, worn steps in towers, smoothed by countless feet, rushes caked with dirt and grease buried in forgotten corners. The air in these digs is cool and earthy, each artifact a glimpse of labor: a clay pot, its rim stained with pottage, a bone needle dropped by a seamstress, a rusted knife, its blade dulled by chopping turnips, a broom handle, its wood splintered, speaks of endless sweeping, the air once thick with dust and the smell of rotting rushes. These finds are fragile, their survival a testament to the workers' presence, the air heavy with the past. The culture was one of duty and survival, shaped by the Lord's needs and the church's influence. Workers lived in his shadow, their days filled with tasks to sustain his household: cooking, cleaning, guarding. The air was heavy with the clatter of pots, the creak of carts, and the steward's commands. Religion was central. Workers attended Mass in the castle chapel, kneeling on cold stone, the air thick with the scent of incense and the drone of Latin prayers. Festivals like Easter or Michaelmas brought feasting, the air rich with roasted goose, ale, and the sound of lutes or pipes. These moments were a release, the community gathering in the courtyard or village green, the air warm with laughter and the glow of torches. Archaeology uncovers the daily grind: kitchen middens, piles of bones, oyster shells, and pottery shards show what workers ate: pig, fowl, or fish, though they got scraps, while the Lord's table groaned with venison. The air in these kitchens was once heavy with the smell of boiling broth and wood smoke. Workers like Agnes eating from wooden bowls, their portions meager. A clay pipe or a carved bone bead found in servants' quarters hints at small joys, the air once filled with a tune or a moment of pride. In the chapel, a worn kneeler or a fragment of candle wax speaks of faith, the air heavy with devotion and the fear of divine judgment. Mysteries linger in these finds. Why were some tools like a chisel or a spoon buried beneath the floor, perhaps hidden during a worker's flight? A hoard of pennies found in a wall suggests fear of theft or loss, the air thick with the weight of secrecy. Mass graves from the Black Death, their bones tangled, speak of sudden devastation, the air heavy with the memory of 1348's horror. Women's lives, like Agnes's, are elusive, their work leaving faint traces: a scorched hearth, a dropped spindle whirl, the air filled with the echo of their labor. Why some children's shoes, tiny and warm, were found in middens remains a puzzle, the air tense with the possibility of loss or abandonment. The castle was a community, its workers bound by shared hardship. Gossip about the Lord's feasts or a night's scandal filled the air, a quiet rebellion against their lot. Songs or tales, shared in the kitchen, taught lessons or brought laughter, the air warm with the rhythm of a ballad. These traces, uncovered by careful hands, weave a picture of resilience, the air heavy with the scent of effort and survival. As we leave this world of artifacts, let's shift to the lives of the elite, whose world of luxury stood in stark contrast to the workers' toil. Picture yourself in the Lord's solar, a private chamber hung with tapestries of hunting scenes, the air warm with the scent of beeswax candles and dried herbs scattered on the floor. The year is 1350, and this is the world of the castle's elite, Sir Robert, the Lord and Lady Eleanor, his wife whose lives of privilege contrast sharply with those of workers like Agnes. The castle is a stage for power, its halls filled with the clink of silver and the rustle of silk, but its rules are no less rigid. Let's explore their world, letting the rhythm of their days, the flicker of candlelight, the murmur of a minstrel's lute settle over you like a velvet curtain, guiding you toward calm. Sir Robert, a knight and landowner, holds his status through the king's favor. His chamber is warm, a fire blazing in a stone hearth, the air scented with the fur of his bed's coverlet and the polish of oak furniture. He rises at sunrise, dressed by a servant in a fine woollen tunic and cloak, its hem embroidered with gold thread, the air soft with the rustle of fabric and the clink of a silver belt. Breakfast is hearty. White bread, soft and fresh, with butter, cheese, and spiced ale, served on a polished table, the air rich with the smell of yeast and cloves. His day is spent managing the estate, overseeing rents, judging disputes in the village, or haunting in the Lord's forest, the air fresh with the scent of pine and the baying of hounds. His role is to maintain power, the air heavy with the weight of tenants' petitions and the steward's reports. Lady Eleanor oversees the household, her gown of dyed wool adorned with fur, her hair covered with a silk veil, the air soft with the scent of lavender oil. She supervises servants like Agnes, ensuring the kitchen produces feasts, venison, swan, or peacock, served with sauces of wine and spices, the air rich with their aroma. Her mornings are spent with her daughters, teaching them embroidery or music, the air filled with the twang of a harp and the rustle of thread. Their children, young Edward and Alice, are educated by a chaplain, learning Latin, arithmetic, and the chivalric code, the air heavy with the smell of ink and parchment. Edward practices with a wooden sword, preparing for knighthood, while Alice learns to manage a household, her future tied to a strategic marriage, the air thick with expectation. The contrast with Agnes's life is stark. Where Agnes sleeps on damp straw, Robert's bed is cushioned with feathers, the air warm with furs and firelight. Where Agnes eats pottage, Robert's feasts include fine meats and wine, served on silver, the air filled with the clink of goblets. Yet both face pressures, Agnes to survive, Robert to maintain his status. A failed harvest could strain his wealth, just as it starves Agnes's family, the air tense with worry over grain stores. War or rebellion threatens both, Robert with his sword, Agnes with fear of siege, the air heavy with the distant sound of hooves or trumpets. The castle's rules bind them all. Robert must uphold etiquette and loyalty to the king, his every move watched by rivals, the air thick with whispers of court intrigue. Servants bridge these worlds, their labor sustaining the lord's luxury. They live in the castle's shadows, hauling wood or scrubbing floors, the air heavy with sweat and ash. Their meals are simple pottage, coarse bread, a sip of ale eaten in the kitchen, the air smoky from the hearth. Some, bound by debt or birth, face harsher conditions, their freedom a distant hope, the air tense with the steward's commands. These workers, like Agnes, are the castle's heartbeat, their toil unseen but vital, the air filled with the rhythm of their tasks. Robert's life is one of privilege but also duty. He owes service to the king, his wealth tied to the land, and his reputation to his actions. The castle's luxury hides its own constraints, no less rigid than the rules governing Agnes. As we leave this world of tapestries and silver, let's shift to the tools and technologies that shaped the castle, the inventions that sustained both worker and lord in their daily lives. Imagine standing in the castle's kitchen, the year 1350, where the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, boiling pottage, and the faint earthiness of herbs. The castle is a fortress of stone and labor, its operations built on the tools and skills of workers like Agnes. From the kitchen's iron pots to the battlements' crossbows, these technologies were simple but vital, each one a partner in the grind of survival. Let's explore this world of craft, letting the rhythm of clanging pots, creaking pulleys, and the steady sweep of a broom settle over you like the hum of a busy hall, guiding you toward rest. The kitchen was the castle's heart, its tools built for scale and endurance. Iron pots, heavy and blackened, hung over the fire, filled with pottage or stew, their weight a strain for Agnes to lift, the air rich with the smell of barley and leeks. Bronze knives, their blades honed daily, chopped turnips or meat, the air sharp with the scent of onions and blood. The oven built of brick, baked coarse rye bread for workers and fine wheat loaves for the lord, its heat intense, the air shimmering with warmth. Spit turning was grueling, the fire's smoke stinging Ainings's eyes, the air filled with the drip of fat and the savory aroma of roasting mutton. These tools were the backbone of the kitchen, their use a constant dance of heat and effort, the air heavy with the clatter of iron and wood. Cleaning was a never-ending task, its tools basic but essential. Brooms of twig or straw swept rushes, their bristles caked with dirt and grease, the air thick with dust as Agnes worked. Brushes scrubbed wooden tables, their bristles worn, while mops of rags cleaned stone floors, the air damp with their effort. Rushlights, reeds dipped in tallow, lit the castle's dim corners, their smoky glow casting shadows, the air acrid with their burning fat. Lye soap, when available, stung the skin, its sharp smell lingering in the air, a rare tool for fighting filth. These cleaning tools were vital but exhausting, the air heavy with the scent of effort and the constant fight against decay. The castle's defenses relied on simple but effective technology. Guards like Thomas used crossbows or spears, their wooden shafts worn smooth by calloused hands, the air filled with the creak of bowstrings or the clank of metal tips. The drawbridge, raised by ropes and pulleys, groaned under its weight, the air dusty with its motion and the smell of oiled hemp. Stone walls, built with chisels and hammers, stood firm, their construction a testament to mason's skill, the air ringing with the strike of iron on stone. These tools protected the castle, but their use was grueling, the air tense with the weight of vigilance on the battlements. Water was a challenge, its scarcity shaping daily life. Wells in the courtyard supplied it, but hauling buckets was backbreaking, the air damp with spills and the muddy taste of the water. Contamination was common, forcing reliance on ale, brewed in the castle or village, the air rich with the yeasty smell of fermenting barley. Mills, powered by hand or water, ground grain for bread, their stones rumbling in the distance, the air dusty with flour. Transport relied on ox carts, their wheels creaking as they carried wood or grain, the air thick with dust on dry days. Within the castle, servants hauled goods up narrow stairs, their arms aching, the air heavy with the scent of sweat and effort. These tools brought risks. A dull knife could slip, drawing blood, the air sharp with a cry. A fire could flare, igniting rushes or straw, the air filling with smoke and panic. Maintenance was constant, sharpening blades, mending ropes, cleaning pots, and a broken tool could halt work, drawing the steward's wrath, the air tense with his displeasure. Yet these tools were the castle's lifeblood, each one a testament to the workers' resilience, the air heavy with the scent of labor and survival. As we leave this world of craft, let's shift to the customs and traditions that gave meaning to their lives, binding them to their community and faith. Picture yourself seated by the kitchen fire, the year 1350, where the air is warm with the scent of burning logs, the faint tang of pottage, and the soft murmur of voices in the evening. For workers like Agnes, life was shaped by customs and traditions, rituals that marked the seasons, strengthened community, and honored the divine. These practices were a lifeline, offering order in a world of toil and rules. Imagine the flicker of a rushlight, the rustle of straw underfoot, and the drone of a prayer, their rhythm soothing like a familiar hymn. Let's wander through these rituals, letting their cadence wrap around you, guiding you toward rest. The church was the heart of life, its rituals anchoring the year. Sundays meant Mass in the castle chapel, workers kneeling on cold stone, the air heavy with the scent of incense and the glow of wax candles. Agnes whispered prayers for health or mercy, her voice blending with the Latin chant, the air thick with devotion and the fear of divine judgment. Festivals were a highlight. Christmas brought feasting, with tables laden with pottage, bread, and roasted fowl, the air rich with the smell of ale and meat. Midsummer saw bonfires and dancing, the air warm with the sound of pipes and the scent of wildflowers. Workers offered candles or bread at the chapel, their hands trembling with faith, the air filled with the hope of blessings. Seasonal traditions tied life to the land. Spring brought blessings for fields, priests sprinkling holy water on plows or seeds, the air fresh with earth and hope. Harvest festivals saw workers gather in the courtyard, sharing pottage and ale, the air warm with laughter and the scent of fresh-cut grain. May Day was a joy, with dancing around a pole, the ground soft underfoot, the air scented with grass and flowers. These rituals were a pause, a chance to forget the cold or filth, the air alive with the community's shared spirit. Weddings were a communal celebration. Agnes and Thomas's marriage was typical a ceremony in the village church, followed by a feast of bread, cheese, and ale, the air filled with the scent of wildflowers and the sound of a piper's tune. Neighbors brought gifts, a clay bowl, a loaf, their voices rising in song, the air warm with joy. The ritual was a bond, sealed with vows and shared food. The community a witness, the air heavy with the weight of new beginnings. Funerals were somber but vital, especially after the Black Death. A worker's death brought the castle together, the body laid out in a hut, washed and dressed in clean linen. The burial was in the churchyard, the air heavy with earth and prayers, neighbors sharing pottage, their presence a comfort. Daily rituals were simpler but meaningful. Meals were a time to gather, the family sharing a pot of pottage or a loaf, the air warm with the smell of onions and the hearth's glow. Prayers were said before eating, a nod to God's protection. The air scented with a pinch of incense or a candle's wax. Superstitions guided actions, a charm hung over the door to ward off spirits, a coin buried for luck. Agnes wore a small cross, its weight a comfort, the air tense with whispered charms against illness or misfortune. These beliefs were a shield, a way to navigate an uncertain world, the air heavy with their quiet power. Storytelling was cherished, done by firelight in the kitchen or village hut. Tales of saints, local heroes, or castle gossip filled the air, their cadence soothing as Agnes listened, her hands resting from scrubbing. The air carried the scent of smoke and straw, the stories a bond between workers, teaching morals or sparking laughter. The castle was a community, its rituals weaving workers together despite their toil, the air warm with the rhythm of shared lives. As we leave this world of tradition, let's shift to the food and sustenance that nourish these workers, sustaining them through their daily labor. Imagine sitting at a wooden bench in the castle's kitchen, the year 1350, where the air is warm with the starchy scent of pottage simmering over a fire, the faint smoke curling upward, mingling with the earthy smell of herbs. Food was the foundation of a worker's life, a necessity that demanded effort and thrift. For people like Agnes, meals were simple, shaped by the castle's stores and the seasons. Yet they were a source of comfort, a moment to pause in a life of labor. Picture the flicker of a rushlight, the clink of wooden spoons, and the soft murmur of workers sharing a meal, their warmth wrapping around you like a worn blanket. Let's explore the tastes, textures, and smells of their table, letting these details settle gently in your mind, guiding you toward rest. Bread was the staple, its crust hard and its interior dense, baked from rye or barley for workers. Agnes kneaded dough when flour was available, her hands dusted with grain. The air filled with the yeasty smell of rising dough and the warmth of the oven. The bread was coarse, often mixed with peas or oats to stretch it, its texture chewy and slightly gritty. Workers ate it at every meal, sometimes plain, sometimes dipped in pottage or ale, the air rich with the faint tang of fermentation. On good days, a scrap of cheese or butter might accompany it, the air warm with their creamy aroma, a rare treat that softened the bread's toughness. Pottage was the heart of the diet, a thick stew of barley, oats, or beans, cooked in an iron pot over the fire. Agnes stirred in vegetables, cabbage, leeks, turnips, or onions, grown in the castle garden or bought from a village market. The air was heavy with the earthy scent of boiling greens, the steam rising in clouds that stung her eyes as she worked. Herbs like parsley, sage, or thyme, foraged or grown, added flavor, their sharp aroma cutting through the pottage's blandness. A bone or a scrap of bacon might be added for richness, but meat was rare for workers, the air filled with longing when the Lord's venison roasted in the hall. And as his portion was served in a wooden bowl, the air warm with the comfort of a hot meal, however simple. Vegetables were a mainstay, their availability tied to the seasons. Peas, beans, and turnips were cheap, their earthy taste a contrast to the monotony of grain. Onions or garlic added sharpness, their scent lingering in the air as Agnes chopped them on a worn board. Fruit was a treat: apples, pears, or berries from hedgerows, its sweetness rare in a diet without sugar. The air carried the juicy aroma of a bitten apple, a fleeting delight for workers like Agnes. Honey was a luxury, reserved for the Lord's table, so fruit was the closest workers came to sweetness, the air soft with its scent during harvest. Meat was scarce, a privilege for the elite. A pig, slaughtered in autumn, provided bacon or sausage for the castle, but workers got scraps, the air heavy with the smell of curing meat in winter. Chickens, kept in the courtyard, gave eggs, often taken for the Lord's table, but a roasted hen was a rare feast, its meat tough but savory, the air rich with dripping fat. Fish salted or smoked was a staple during Lent, its briny taste sharp on the tongue, the air filled with the smell of barrels unpacked in the kitchen. Hunting was forbidden, the Lord's forests guarded, but a poached rabbit was a quiet victory, its meat a treat shared in secret, the air tense with the thrill of defiance. Ale was the drink of choice, safer than well water, which often tasted of mud or worse. Agnes sipped it from a wooden mug, its yeasty tang refreshing, the air warm with the smell of fermentation from the castle's brewhouse. Water, when drunk, was boiled or mixed with herbs to mask its grit, the air carrying the faint stench of the well's depths. Wine was for nobles, its cost beyond a worker's reach, the air filled with the clink of their goblets in the hall. Brewing was a household task, the air rich with the scent of barley and yeast, a skill Agnes learned to stretch the family's resources. Food preparation was women's work, often shared with children. Agnes cooked over the hearth, its heat uneven, the pots heavy and prone to cracking. She chopped vegetables or stirred pottage, her hands calloused, the air filled with the clink of knives and the bubble of boiling water. Preservation was critical: grain stored in barrels, meat salted, fruit dried in the sun. Waste was unthinkable. Bones were boiled for broth, stale bread crumbled into pottage, the air a mix of smoke, herbs, and the faint sweetness of stored apples. These tasks were a family effort, the air heavy with the shared labor of survival. Meals were a communal act, workers gathered around a bench in the kitchen or a village hut, sharing a pot or loaf. Agnes sat with other maids, their spoons clinking, the air warm with the hearth's glow and the murmur of talk gossip about the Lord, the day's work, or the weather. The act of eating was a pause, a moment of connection in a life of toil, the air filled with the comfort of togetherness. Even in hunger, there was gratitude for what was on the table, each bite a small defiance against the castle's demands. As we leave the workers' table, let's shift to the challenges and dangers that shaped their lives, from the perils of labor to the threats lurking in the castle's shadows. Imagine walking the castle's dark corridors at night, the year 1350, where the air is cold, the stone walls slick with damp, and the distant crackle of a fire echoes from the great hall. For workers like Agnes, life was a constant negotiation with danger, cold, disease, and the weight of rules were ever present, their impact felt in the quiet moments of fear and loss. Picture the flicker of a rushlight, the weight of a bucket in calloused hands, and the tense silence of a prayer for safety, their rhythm a steady pulse in a world of hardship. Let's explore these perils, letting their weight settle gently in your thoughts, like snow falling on a stone wall, guiding you toward calm. Cold was a relentless foe. The castle's stone walls trapped the chill, their surfaces icy, even in summer, the air heavy with damp and mildew. The great hall's fire offered some warmth, but its heat didn't reach the servants' quarters or the battlements, where guards like Thomas stood, the air cutting through their cloaks like a knife. Workers' clothes, thin wool tunics and hose offered little protection, the air chilling their bones as they worked or slept. Winter nights were brutal, the straw pallets freezing, the air piercing the lungs with every breath. Frostbite was a risk, especially for guards, their fingers and toes numb, the air stinging with the bite of wind and snow. Disease was a constant shadow, its reach swift in the castle's close quarters. Fevers, dysentery, or smallpox spread quickly, with no sanitation to stop them. Agnes tended her sick child with a cloth soaked in vinegar, the air thick with the smell of illness and burning herbs meant to ward off miasma. The Black Death had left its mark in 1348, killing half the village, the air heavy with the scent of death and fear. Water from the well was often tainted, its taste muddy, the air filled with the risk of every sip. Workers relied on ale, but even that could sour, the air sharp with its fermentation gone wrong. Illness was a silent killer, the air tense with the fear of a cough or fever spreading through the kitchen. Labor was dangerous even for the young. Agnes scrubbed pots or hauled wood, her hands blistered from lye or splinters, the air filled with the crackle of the fire and the clank of iron. A slip of a knife could draw blood, the air sharp with her gasp, while a spark from the hearth could ignite rushes, the air filling with smoke and panic. Guards faced risks on the battlements. A fall from a ladder or a misstep in the dark could break a bone, the air tense with the creak of a crossbow and the distant howl of wind. Women like Agnes faced additional dangers. Drunken soldiers or overbold knights could threaten their safety, the air heavy with unspoken fear and the need to stay vigilant. The castle's rules were a peril of their own. The steward's word was law, his punishments swift a cuff for a spilled pot, a fine for tardiness, the air sharp with his voice. Theft was a temptation, stealing a candle or a loaf could ease hunger, but the penalty was flogging or banishment. The air tense with the fear of discovery. The church added its own pressures. Missing Mass or breaking Lent's fast could bring accusations of sin, the air heavy with the priest's warnings. Workers moved carefully, their heads bowed, the air thick with the weight of hierarchy and obedience. The castle itself was a hazard. Narrow stairs and uneven floors caused falls, the air filled with the thud of a body on stone. Construction, when it occurred, brought risks, falling stones or collapsing scaffolds, the air ringing with hammers and shouts. War was a distant threat, but sieges could trap workers inside, the air thick with fear and the smell of stored grain as supplies dwindled. The community was a lifeline, workers sharing food or warmth, their voices a murmur in the kitchen or courtyard, the air warm with their presence. Faith offered solace, prayers whispered in the chapel, the air heavy with candle smoke and hope. Yet resilience was their strength, a quiet defiance against a world that demanded so much. As we leave this world of peril, let's shift to the education and learning that offered a glimmer of hope, a chance to rise above the challenges of daily life. Imagine sitting in the castle chapel, the year 1350, where the air smells of wax and old parchment, and the faint scratch of a quill fills the silence. Education for workers like Agnes was a rare privilege, shaped by the church and necessity. yet it held a quiet power, a spark of possibility, and a world of toil. For the Lord's children, learning was a path to power, while for workers, it was a practical skill snatched in stolen moments. Picture the glow of a candle, the weight of a slate in small hands, and the murmur of a priest teaching letters, their rhythm soothing like a gentle breeze. Let's explore this world of education, letting its faint light settle in your mind, guiding you toward rest. For most workers, education was informal, woven into the fabric of work. Agnes taught her daughter, Margaret, to cook and sew, guiding her small hands to knead dough or thread a needle, the air warm with the smell of pottage and wool. Thomas taught his son, if he had lived, to handle horses, showing him how to mend a harness, the air filled with the scent of leather and hay. Children learned by doing, hauling water, cleaning pots, or tending fires, their knowledge shaped by survival. The air carried the sounds of labor, the clatter of pots, the splash of water, each task a lesson in endurance, taught without words, but etched into muscle and memory. Formal education was tied to the church, accessible to a few. In the castle, a chaplain might teach a handful of boys to read and write, their lessons held in a corner of the chapel. Imagine Agnes's son, had he survived, tracing letters on a slate, the air heavy with the scratch of chalk and the smell of damp stone. The curriculum was narrow Latin for prayers, scripture for morals, but it offered a chance to become a clerk or steward, a step above the kitchen's heat. Reading was a skill few mastered, writing even rarer, reserved for those who could afford the time, the air thick with the effort of learning. Girls had less access. Their education domestic Margaret learned to stir pottage or mend a tunic, her hands calloused but skilled, the air warm with the scent of herbs or thread. The Lord's children, like Edward and Alice, had tutors, often priests or scholars, who taught Latin, arithmetic, and chivalry. The air was heavy with the smell of ink and parchment, the scratch of a quill marking lessons in a solar or chapel. Edward memorized psalms or practiced geometry, his voice echoing, while Alice learned embroidery or music, the air soft with the twang of a lute. Books were precious, hand-copied by monks, their pages a treasure, the air scented with leather and wax. These lessons prepared them for knighthood or marriage, the air thick with the weight of their parents' ambitions. Knowledge was often oral for workers. In the evening, Agnes listened to tales of saints or castle gossip, told by firelight, their cadence soothing as she rested her hands. The air carried the scent of smoke and straw, the stories teaching morals or survival courage, obedience or cunning. Neighbors shared songs or legends, their voices a murmur in the kitchen, the air warm with laughter or gasps. Artisans like the castle's cook or blacksmith taught their trade to apprentices, passing down the rhythm of kneading or hammering, the air filled with flour or sparks. Education faced challenges. Teachers were few, often priests with little time, the air heavy with their own duties. Resources were scarce. A book or slate could cost a year's wages, and work often pulled children away, the air filled with parents' demands. The church's grip limited secular learning, emphasizing scripture over numbers, the air thick with incense and chants. Yet knowledge was a ladder, however steep. A boy who read could become a scribe, escaping the hearth, the air alive with the scratch of his quill. A girl who learned herbs could heal her family, the air scented with her remedies. These small victories were seeds of hope, planted in the soil of the castle's world. As we leave this world of learning, let's shift to the leisure and entertainment that offered workers a moment of joy, a chance to rest in a life of toil. Picture yourself in the castle courtyard at dusk, the year 1350, where the air is cool with the scent of damp earth, and the sound of a pipe drifts through the crowd. For workers like Agnes, leisure was a rare escape, a moment to find joy amid labor and rules. These pastimes, music, games, and festivals were a celebration of community, a chance to laugh and dream in a world that demanded so much. Imagine the glow of a bonfire, the clatter of dice, and the soft murmur of a tale, their warmth wrapping around you like a woven blanket. Let's wander through these moments, letting their joy settle over you, guiding you toward rest. Festivals were the heart of leisure, tied to the church or seasons. Christmas brought feasting, with tables laden with pottage, bread, and roasted fowl, the air rich with the smell of ale and meat. Workers gathered in the courtyard, their voices rising in song, the air warm with the glow of torches and the sound of lutes. Midsummer saw bonfires and dancing, villagers joining hands around a pole, the ground soft underfoot, the air scented with wildflowers and grass. These moments were a release, the community's shared joy, a balm against toil, the air alive with laughter and the rhythm of pipes or drums. Music was a constant joy, even in the kitchen. Agnes sang ballads as she scrubbed pots, her voice blending with the clatter, the air warm with the scent of pottage and smoke. In the village, men sang while mending tools, their melodies lightening the work, the air filled with the sound of a pipe or flute. Instruments were simple wooden flutes, lutes, or small drums, their notes drifting through the air, a comfort after a long day. Dance was communal, especially at festivals, with workers joining in circle dances or jigs, their steps steady on the earth, the air warm with the energy of the crowd. Games were another pastime. Men played wrestling or archery in the courtyard, their shouts echoing, the air filled with the creak of bows and the thud of arrows. Children tossed stones or chased hoops, their laughter a bright note, the air dusty with their play. Board games like tables, played with wooden pieces, were popular in the servants' quarters, the air clicking with dice and the murmur of bets. Fairs brought spectacle jugglers, storytellers, or mummers' plays, the air rich with the smell of roasted nuts and the excitement of a crowd. Storytelling was cherished, done by firelight in the kitchen or village hut. Tales of St. George, Robin Hood, or castle scandals filled the air, their cadence soothing as Agnes listened, her hands resting from labor. The air carried the scent of smoke and straw, the stories of bond between workers, teaching courage or sparking laughter. The castle was a stage, with religious plays or gossip shared in the courtyard, the air warm with cheers or gasps. These moments were a bridge connecting workers to their world, the air filled with the rhythm of shared lives. The natural world offered leisure, too. Families walked to nearby woods, gathering berries or herbs, the air fresh with greenery and the scent of pine. Markets were entertainment, with stalls selling bread or trinkets, the air rich with the smell of spices and the chatter of vendors. These moments were fleeting, a chance to feel the sun or taste a rare apple, the air warm with the joy of a treat. Nobles had grander pastimes, hunting, feasts with minstrels, but workers found joy in simpler ways, the air filled with the sounds of community and the warmth of connection. As we leave this world of joy, let's shift to a final reflection, tying together the threads of these workers' lives. As the sounds of the castle fade, the crackle of the hearth, the creak of wooden floors, the scent of pottage and smoke, let your mind rest in the quiet that follows. We've wandered through the lives of workers like Agnes, from the filthy, freezing halls to the strict rules that govern their days, from the weight of hardship to the fleeting joys of a festival. Their world was one of labor and duty, shaped by stone, fire, and hierarchy. Yet it was also one of resilience, where community and faith offered strength. Imagine yourself now in a soft, warm bed, the air still and the challenges of their time far away, their struggles a distant echo. Their lives, though unrecorded, remind us of the endurance that carries us through, the quiet victories that define us in the face of hardship. Let the details slip away, like embers fading in a dying fire. The cold stone walls, the smoky air, the taste of coarse bread and ale, they fade into the background, leaving only the peace of this moment. You've journeyed through a world that shaped the medieval age, its workers' small hands and steady hearts keeping its rhythm alive. Now it's time to rest, to let go of the castle's bustle and sink into calm. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the gentle rhythm of history lull you into sleep, safe in the stillness of now.